Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you again to the Hill, Prairie View A&M University. This is the place where excellence lives, or excellence lives here. It's a better way of saying it. Today we are honored to have your presence here. We are excited about what's going to be taking place the next 2 days. We have representation from various universities. We're going to do roll call right now. We'll say that for a later time. But we'll go ahead and get started on today. Today is different. We're honored actually to invite a couple moguls, pioneers, innovators in their fields to actually share this stage and to have a candid conversation. Coming to the stage, we'll have Lauren Sills. Lauren Sills is the head of operations for the NBA Foundation, the league's first ever charitable foundation founded in 2020. She's a proud alumna of Spelman College. Lauren has been driven by the idea that to whom much is given, much is required, and has worked over the past 15 years to ensure that her professional career and personal endeavors are tied to service. At the NBA, Lauren is responsible for overseeing the foundation's $30 million budget, strategic communications, grant making, and signature programs that support Black youth. Lauren's extensive experience has led her to work across a variety of industries such as nonprofit, government, and sports, with the common thread of supporting and investing in communities of color. Before the NBA, Lauren led philanthropy and community partnerships for the East Coast at Nike and oversaw the largest employee volunteer program at the J.P. Morgan Chase Foundation. Lauren has a long history of working with and advocating for young people of color across the country. Starting her career as a high school teacher with Teach for America in Los Angeles, and later training and organizing young people at Generation Progress, a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C. Additionally, Lauren has served as a staffer on Capitol Hill with U.S. Senator Tom Carper. Lauren earned her master's in education from Loyola Marymount University. In her spare time, Lauren enjoys running races, reading, and hosting dinner parties. Let us welcome Lauren Sills to the stage. Joining her is no stranger to Prairie View A&M University. We have Mr. Jarren Small. Jarren is a millennium mogul from Missouri City, Texas. Mr. Small believes in striving for greatness and paying it forward. While attending Hightower High School, he was accepted to the Broadcast Media Academy. Smalls found comfort in expanding his knowledge in media. This opportunity helped perfect his skill set to work with leading companies like BET, the NBA, and Comcast Sports. Mr. Small graduated from Prairie View A&M University in fall 2012 with his bachelor's in mass communications with a minor in marketing. While attending college, he developed a passion for the development of a student body by attaining the position of Student Government Association president in 2011. This led to him forming a relationship with the mayor of Houston and HTV, also known as Houston Television. Small's goal is to make sure that he's a leading example of what the city of Houston invested in him as a child and wants the world to know that anything is possible with a positive mindset. He's also represented Reading with a Rapper, which is, he'll talk more about that in his discussion, I hope. But welcome to the stage, Mr. Jarren Small.
What up, y'all? Y'all up? Good morning. How y'all doing today? Good, good. So we are here for a fireside chat with my good friend Lauren Sills. And y'all heard a little bit about her, but before we get into the whole conversation, we have to do a fire round real quick where we're just gonna learn some quick things.
All right.
Who are you listening to right now? And who's on your playlist?
Well, first I'll start with good morning. It's great to be with you all today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my journey and my work.
Yes.
I'm a big music fan, so I am listening to Tyler, the Creator's latest album. Anybody else? All right.
Okay,
Favorite
okay.
song? Okay, like him. I like that too.
You working in the NBA. Favorite team right now?
So I work at the league office, which
Yeah.
is like the governing body of the NBA. So I'm based in our headquarters, which is in New York City. Technically, I'm not supposed to have a favorite team. So before I started working here almost 4 years ago, my favorite team was the 76ers because I'm originally from Delaware. And if you're a big fan of the 76ers, you know AI is everything. So before NBA, it was all 76ers. Now I love all teams. All teams are treated equally. But right now, since I'm in Houston, go Rockets.
Okay. Favorite food? What are you eating on right now? What's your go-to?
Ooh, favorite food. I'm a big foodie. I would say gumbo's number 1, fried catfish number 2,
Okay.
cheeseburgers number 3.
I like that. That's a balance. I like that. Lastly, because you work for Nike, what was your favorite Nike silhouette at the time when you were there?
Ooh,
Or
tell
if
me
you still-
more. Like
Favorite shoe, Nike
favorite
shoe.
shoe. Okay, I'll actually be vulnerable with you all. The story with Nike is that I worked at JP Morgan Chase Foundation. So as you can imagine, working for like a corporate foundation and just a corporate setting, you're dressing in suits every single day. When I actually applied for the job at Nike, Nike was a completely different work environment. People were wearing like athleisure every day. You know, you were really pushed to work out. Like they really do emphasize fitness. So during the interviews, not only was I wearing a suit, going to the office, kind of looking crazy to them, they also ask you specific Nike questions. So they would ask like, what's your favorite Nike commercial? Who's your favorite Nike athlete? And of course they asked, what's your favorite Nike shoe? I'm a Converse girl, so I wasn't actually wearing any Nikes. So I actually asked one of my best friends who's a big sneakerhead what her favorite shoe was, got the talking points for that. So then when my future boss asked me what my favorite shoe was, I was like, Air Force One, da-da-da, and I had all the little things. I ended up getting the job. I had never worn an Air Force One until I got that job. So.
Wow. Okay. Air Force Ones are like high now. They're like $100 for one pair. It used to be like $2 for $89 when I was in high school. I'm sounding old, but like y'all be paying premium prices for these shoes now. It's crazy. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so now we can really get into conversation. Honestly, we have some of the most top HBCU students across the country, so clap it up for yourselves for being here. And the goal of this conversation is to make sure y'all can find a process in what you guys are doing, but also elevate yourself into career pathways, but think creatively and have an imagination within that process too, right? So start off, first question, who is Lauren Sills? Where is she from? Give us some more context on the back end of Lauren Sills.
Sure. So who's Lauren Sills? I am a woman of faith. That's like the first thing. I am a daughter of Jim and Lonnie Sills. I am a sister. I am a friend. I'm an aunt. And most importantly, I'm a leader. And I've spent the last 15 years working in a variety of different industries. So whether that was starting my career off as a high school teacher, teaching special ed students, 10th and 11th grade,
Wow.
working in government, working at the U.S. Senate, working in nonprofit, or really spending time over the last decade pushing companies, huge brands like JP Morgan Chase and Nike, and now the NBA to be much more purpose-driven. So that's Lauren Sills at the core.
So I think y'all heard she was a teacher first, right? She went from being a teacher to working for the NBA, right? What made you want to be a teacher? I know we talked in the back. You talked about how your grandfather was a mayor. Like, can you give us a little more texture about that?
So I grew up in a family that was rooted in service. Does that resonate with anybody out here? Like maybe your parents were teachers or really active in their church. Like maybe you even grew up going to different meetings just because your parents or your community wanted to ensure that you were giving back. I grew up in an environment like that. So given, yes, my grandparents and my parents, I knew I wanted to like help change the world. And specifically going to Spelman, they really cultivated that. If you're familiar with Spelman, which again is my favorite HBCU, we definitely cultivate young women to be leaders and specifically to be change agents. And given that, I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't know how to make that a career. And at Spelman, they really did emphasize there's a lot of different ways that you can make a difference, whether that's locally or at the state level or even federal. And I chose the path of being a teacher. I had tutored a number of students. I thought tutoring was kind of similar to teaching. It is not. But I decided to do the Teach for America program and made my way to Los Angeles, and I became a 10th and 11th grade special ed teacher. It was a transformative experience. I mean, it was a school that had limited resources. It was a school that I wore multiple hats on. Like, I was the volleyball coach, I was a geometry teacher, I was a history teacher, I was, also a friend to many of my students' parents, as well as, a disciplinarian to some of these students. It was incredibly challenging, but now kind of looking back, it was the perfect first job because everything that I do now is solving problems, and what I was doing back teaching was literally solving problems every single day. And it was the perfect environment to kind of set me up for success. So whether that was teaching or working in government or even working in corporate social responsibility, like I'm constantly solving problems and hopefully bringing resources and tools and capital now to our communities.
Okay, so at some point, and thank you for sharing that, at some point you were like, okay, I'm teaching, I'm doing my thing, but maybe you felt like you wanted more or you needed to pivot and you went into government, right? Directly from there. What made you draw that correlation of like, I'm gonna go from being a teacher to go working in the government? And then that process of changing, right? And when I mean that process, like personally, what did that do to you to like, how did you get yourself out of that mode of being a teacher to go into a new space to be the best version of yourself in that space?
That's a good question. So I have always been super ambitious and very, very driven. I feel like I'm talking to the audience now who's also very driven, right? And you might be at school and you might be like, you know what, I love my major, but I'm interested in learning new skills. Or you might be studying something and you might be like, you know what, I actually want to go in a different direction. What I call that is I call it doing an internal audit. Like you're constantly having a conversation with yourself about what skills are you looking to possess? What skills do you currently not have? How do you want to grow and push yourself to be the best version of yourself? And I encourage everyone to kind of have that internal audit because it's clear that you want more, but you might not be sure how to get there. But the first thing you got to do is have that conversation. So I had that conversation as a teacher. I wasn't super happy with my school or satisfied at the time, and I knew I could make a bigger impact. And specifically at that time, this is like during Obama, I was incredibly inspired. I wanted to do so much more, and I really wanted to help specifically our community. So therefore, I was like, government is the way to go. I gotta be in Obama's White House. The process to get to be from a teacher in Southeast LA to go to work at the US Senate was not an easy task. And if you're familiar with teaching, and you all have had teachers, you get like 30 minutes of free time. I would take 20 minutes of that free time for months having informational interviews. I talked to anyone who literally had a career or background or education experience that I wanted to model. So I would spend out of my 30-minute lunch break every single day talking to a brand new person and building and maintaining and growing my network. So that like being tedious and detail-oriented and working hard and being persistent, like consistency is success. Consistency is key, and doing that for over 6 months got me from being a teacher to then working in the US Senate.
You said something really important. You maximize your time. And I think y'all need to understand, and if y'all don't understand, like how time is probably the most valuable thing we all have here while we're on earth, right? And so within college, you have that freedom to do what you want, when you want. Nobody's gonna tell you how to go do it, when to go do it. All of us being HBCUs is almost like the prerequisite of life. They kind of get us prepared to go beyond the HBCUs. But like that time of maximizing your time where you might have that downtime, you could like, man, I don't want to go do that today. I want to go take a nap, or I want to go do something else. You took the time to say, how do I maximize this to really be, if I want to get out of my situation, it has to be with me, right? Mm-hmm. You created your own motion. And I think that propelled you into another mindset to be like, okay, this is what it's going to take for me to stay up here. But you did it to yourself, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think opportunity that we all have is you can literally do anything that you set your mind to. But that takes discipline, it takes hard work, it takes commitment, and it takes sacrifice. And if you don't have that, you're not gonna be able to move from any position, from position A to position B. So it's really critical, again, that internal audit, because what got you to college, right, is different than what got you to high school. What got you to college is gonna be different from you getting your first job. It's gonna take a different skill set. It's gonna take a different personality and a different mindset. So you gotta just make sure that you have at least those grounding, I would say, elements of persistence, commitment, discipline, and hard work ethic to get there.
And I'm going somewhere. So now we're at the U.S. Senate. Talk briefly about just your experience there and what you saw being on the other side of that versus being more on the consumer side of seeing it from a television or from that perspective.
So I did have a little bit of foresight into working in government. My grandfather was the first African-American mayor of the city that I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. So I saw, I basically had a hands-on experience working and being with him all the time to understand that, one, it takes you having a public servant heart to support and be selfless for your community. I thought that government really was, and this is being recorded, so I can't say everything, but truly I thought government was the way to change people's lives and to make a difference. And through that job, I was able to understand the challenges that the constituents of Delaware, which is where I'm originally from, and that's the senator that I worked for, what they were facing. I literally spent my days, y'all, picking up calls from any constituent. Like if you called has anyone called their senator or congressperson before? Okay, you talk to somebody, right? I would be the person that you talk to. You would tell me, like, your trash hasn't been picked up, or you would tell me, hey, this actually is affecting me in this different way. You would basically complain, but complain in the best way possible, right? This is your civic duty, your civic participation. You actually should be telling your congressmen and women the challenges so they can actually create legislation. The role of that job, though, was pretty taxing. You're constantly just hearing from people, and you're hoping that legislation is going to move forward because you want to help the people that you just talked to. But I actually wasn't seeing that happen. I had spent over 2 years in the Senate, and it was in gridlock. So literally, there weren't any laws that were being created. There wasn't any change that was being made. And so at that point, I was like, I need to actually go into nonprofit or move and change because I actually want to make a difference, and government at that time wasn't going to take me there.
Okay, so now you realize that, and I'm assuming from there we're going to Nike.
From there, we're going to New York,
Okay,
and we're going to
New
JP
York.
Morgan Chase.
JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah. Well, we can go to Nike.
Okay,
Yeah.
no. I mean, JP Morgan Chase is important too because now you're in the finance sector, and I mean, I'm just thinking about how you're a special ed teacher. Then you go work in the U.S. Senate. In that position you specifically did, what was the name of the position so they can have that?
Yes, it was called a staff assistant, and I was a legislative correspondent. So that means I would take all of the things that our constituents are saying, I would write letters on behalf of the senator, and we would send that out to that constituent.
So you went from being a teacher, Senate staffer, now you're working in JP Morgan Chase. How did we get there, and what made you jump from like, okay, my next move is now, I'm kind of maximizing my space here. Let me go to the finance sector.
So I had worked in nonprofit. Has anybody worked for a nonprofit before, or even just volunteered? Okay, what was the nonprofit that you worked for? And do you mind standing up and saying your name? Hey, Chris. Yeah. Love that, Chris.
Love that.
Somebody else over here. Who's volunteered at a nonprofit organization? Hi, Andrew. Amazing. All right, someone back here.
Ooh, the red jacket, yeah. And the mic is coming for you right there so you can talk into it.
Okay, good morning, everyone. How you guys doing today? Awesome sauce, awesome sauce. I am Patton Drayton Brown, a senior biology major at Clark Atlanta University, NAAHP. Hey,
Yes.
Timberlake. How are you?
Good.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I currently work for the Lowry Institute for Joseph E. Lowry. If you guys know him, he was a civil rights activist with MLK, and his daughter actually started the program. It's a nonprofit where we focus on making sure that different things within the community, so education capstones, civic engagement, that students are aware of what is going on in their community, and just making a difference, change agents, making a change within the community. But yes.
Love that. So
Awesome.
we had music or music affiliated kind of nonprofit. We had stem cell, bone marrow, like research. We obviously have civic engagement. What you're all hearing is that there are thousands, actually there's 1.5 million nonprofits in the US. There's always a way to give back, but I actually ended up kind of learning about corporate social responsibility by working at a nonprofit. As we all know, our nonprofits have to actually ask for funding, which is called grants, and they're either asking the federal government, they might be asking a big brand or a company to give them funding so they can continue with their programming. I was able to not only meet people who were being funders, but I was really motivated and inspired by them because they actually had the capital to like make the change. And so I had met this dynamic Black woman named Jessica who was a funder for a pretty big Chicago-based group. And I was like, you know what? I think I could do Jessica's job. And it wasn't that I thought like I was as good as Jessica, but I recognized that I had some of the same skill sets. And I was able to learn from her in a way that I was like, you know what, I should go after it. And so I saw this job at JP Chase, and honestly, I spent like close to 8 months just doing research on corporate social responsibility. Like, who are the philanthropists of the world? Who are the richest? Who are the billionaires who are constantly giving money? Who are the best companies that are not only, you know, having a philanthropic arm or charity, but they're actually like doing the work and making an impact where their customers are, or clients are, or consumers. And so I did a lot of research and then started to go after all these interviews. And luckily enough, got a job at JP Chase and moved to Brooklyn. And, you know, it's really been almost a decade since.
I feel like this is probably a huge pivot shift in your career pathway once you kind of get to this sector. And then speaking of nonprofits, you know, when I graduated from Prairie, we started our first company. It was a nonprofit. So you can imagine coming out of college and your job is to give away money when you're technically like in debt coming out of college. It's kind of crazy, but the aspect of giving in the ideology of it was so important for us because we learned that you can never outgive the giver. So the more that we make an investment, I don't know how you guys are when it comes in your spiritual world or religious world, but God made it and increased it to us because we were being intentional with what we were doing, right? And that grew us to be where we are now, where we've been working for ourselves for 12 plus years by starting a nonprofit. I wouldn't have thought I would have a music label and be working with artists across the country, teaching kids how to read and write through their lyrics from a nonprofit, right? So I think sometimes we limit nonprofit sector a little bit because it's like it's not as sexy as capitalism or for-profit or getting a job and making money, but always think about how you can use the greater good in different ways. So like we run our nonprofit like a for-profit, right? We just have tax benefits because we're just looking at it differently. So be unique in the different industries you look at, but the nonprofit sector I think is something that we should really like always dial into because like she said, there's so much capital there that is open if we just properly navigate the timelines and, you know, get those the right way. Okay, so we're in the finance sector. Mentally, how are you feeling at this point? Like, are you tired? Like, teacher, Senate, like, what's the time span? How long was this between each, you know, career pathway?
I was probably on average like a little over like 3 years at each job. Wow. It does take this is what I believe, it takes over a year to really master a job where you are competent and confident in your roles and responsibilities. And hopefully within that time period when I was at these jobs, I was like getting a promotion too. How was I feeling? It's funny, I have some best friends in the audience. I'm like, you have to ask them. I'm such a like workhorse that I was going nonstop. I'm still going nonstop. And that hasn't stopped since. I do think there is a sense of urgency I have because, again, being a person of faith, like I don't know how long I have, but I do want to make an impact while I'm here. And these jobs allow me to do that. And I'm hopefully, you know, as ambitious as I am, going to be able to continue to make an impact on a greater scale, you know, years from now as well.
Absolutely. Okay, now
I was probably tired though.
I'm pretty.
Yeah, I was probably tired.
I'm pretty sure you're tired. Now, okay, at some point you realize 3 years in, I want to make another shift.
Yes.
And so now we're going from JP Morgan Chase to Nike.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to Portland. Did you go to move to Portland?
No, I actually was in New York. So first of all, raise your hand if you're a big fan of Nike. Oh, yeah. Okay. I told y'all the story that I didn't really have as many shoes as I would like. I did end up getting a number when I was there. But the thing about Nike is I didn't even know Nike had like a philanthropic arm or a charity. I didn't know what Nike was even doing in communities. So it was fascinating that I just saw this on LinkedIn, a job description. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And I literally read that job description, printed it out, wrote, you know how you have job descriptions and there's like a bullet for every single role or every single like responsibility.
What was the position?
That position was like senior manager of a group that's called Social and Community Impact. It's essentially like Nike's foundation. And I was like, I literally went line by line. This is just like how meticulous I am. I went line by line to basically have evidence or an example of how I could do that job. That job, because it's Nike, and all of y'all raise your hand, it's a global brand. Thousands of people applied to that job. Nike actually only keeps job descriptions up for 1 week because they get thousands of applicants. It's incredibly competitive. I had 8 interviews for that job, and I got it. Wow. But it took that, like, literally being that detail-oriented. I studied or stalked, like all of these people on LinkedIn. I was sending out emails just to learn more about Nike's culture. Because as much as people are interviewing me, I'm interviewing them. Do I want to work at this company? Is this going to be the right fit for me? And Nike ultimately was. It was the best company.
Okay, so I want to stay here for a bit. I think you said something really important about how most times we're always trying to go be getting the job positions right, but we're not interviewing them. Mm-hmm. How important is to really make that connection for yourself where it makes sense for you and you're choosing yourself within the job versus just choosing the job because it's just the career path or the brand or what it is. And also, did you feel at that point you had enough stock and leverage to do that within your career pathway?
At that moment, I do think I had that because I had built all these different skills, right? I started as a teacher, then worked in government, and then was able to work in nonprofit, and then ultimately I was at a big brand, JP Morgan Chase. But to your kind of first question, like, it's difficult. It's not easy. I do think that sometimes, especially like in this crazy world we all live in, it looks like everybody's got it together. It looks like via Instagram that they got that job after one interview or now they're making this amount of money. It just takes such a large amount of work and effort and discipline to be able to do any of these jobs. And so I had to prepare and equip myself. So when I say I was interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me, I had to be ready to interview them. I had to study enough about that job, about that role, about that team, about that department. So I was asking the right questions. Like, I couldn't just ask, especially at that level, to like my new hiring manager, oh, when does the job start? Oh, how much am I gonna make? No, I needed to ask strategic questions. So I was getting the answer that I wanted to make sure that I was making the decision that was best for me and my core values. So again, you have to kind of do all of those steps. Now, you can't necessarily do it maybe at your first job or maybe even your second job, but you definitely can do it when you're able to build up those skills and you feel really confident in what you're able to bring to those companies.
Awesome. What were some of the actual projects that you worked on at Nike while you were there in your tenure? I mean, I'm curious.
So Nike was truly one of the best companies I've ever worked for. And if you're familiar with Nike, you know they have thousands of like the biggest athletes. Now, at JP Morgan Chase, I wasn't working with athletes. I wasn't working with celebrities. My very first week on the job at Nike, well, that Friday, I should say, on that Friday, I was working with Colin Kaepernick. I was on the set of his brand new jersey. I don't know if people remember his jersey. It was like 7, and Nike had, done this huge campaign, obviously, with him. And I was on the set. He wanted, instead of models, typically as you see any commercial, it's beautiful people, but he actually wanted young people to be in his commercial. He wanted young people to be on the set and to be featured wearing his, jersey, etc. So got to meet him in the first like 6 days of being at
Is this
Nike.
okay? So this is pre-Neil Kaepernick.
No, this is after Neil.
Okay,
Yeah, this is after
okay.
Neil. This is like who he is today. I mean, this was 2018.
Gotcha. Okay.
But literally, that was the first week. Then 3 weeks later, and I'll share this story with you all, is that my very first project was Mamba League. And that's Kobe Bryant's league. And essentially, Kobe wanted to do, through his partnership and being a Nike athlete for over 20 years, he wanted to create a free program where kids could learn the fundamentals of basketball. So we had Mamba League in New York as well as in LA, and it was a 3-month program. So if you were a kid that was like 8 to 12, we were working with you. You were working with like top tier trainers, and you were getting the skills that it took to be a basketball player. Plus, it was fun. And Kobe came to multiple events. I got a chance to meet with him and work with his team, and it was incredible. The very next year, we were still planning for Mamba League, and a week before Mamba League had launched in both LA and New York, he had passed away.
Wow.
But like his impact, hundreds, it's thousands of kids that were in that Mamba League program, but his impact affected millions.
Yeah, that's crazy. Man, you were there at a really unique, special time where culture was really shifting and changing. And you were really a part of some really important cultural shifting things that were specifically pointed towards us as Black people. And to think that you started as a teacher, and at some point you get to be in that position to where you're really helping magnify some really big things. I want to get to the NBA because I have a holistic question around all of this. Yep. Now, from there, what made you shift and go to the NBA?
So I wasn't looking for a job. I was very, very satisfied working at Nike. I was so happy with my team. I had all these incredible projects and loved Nike's culture. This is during the summer of 2020, and Nike at the time had announced $140 million that they were giving to Black communities. I mean, this was during the time, as we all recall, like every single corporation was pledging that they were going to support our communities, do something for Black youth or Black communities and Black people. And I'd heard in August of 2020 that the NBA had announced that they were starting their very first charitable foundation. The league and what we call owners, but we call them team governors, they had pledged $300 million for Black youth ages 14 to 24. So that was actually like the most amount of money I had heard from a company, and I was like, oh, that's like kind of cool. I had gotten the opportunity to meet a ton of folks just working at Nike, and 2 different people had said, hey, Lauren, there's a role to be like the number 2 for this new foundation that the NBA is starting. Are you interested? And you do get to a point in your career when you're doing really well and you kind of have your head down, but you're building relationships. People will come to you and say, hey, I saw this job opportunity. You should go for it. You should think about it. I told these people no. I was like, no, I'm really happy at Nike. Then I actually had an old work wife, which just basically means like a best friend, that we worked together. This girl and I hadn't talked for years. Her name was Rebecca. She had sent me a text that was the same job description. And she was like, hey, I saw this job and thought of you, like, hope you're well. And I was like, hey, how are you? Miss you. And then it was also like, I've been hearing about this job. My dad and I are extremely close, and so I talked to my dad about it, and he was just like, go for it. You're happy at Nike, so if you don't get it, you'll be good. And if you get it, this could change your life. It's funny because I mentioned the Nike process. As you can imagine, the NBA is just as competitive. And because this was a startup, like they just had hired an executive director, they had no other staff, that this was a really highly competitive role. And so I went for it. It actually took me 8 interviews as well. But every single step, and it took a long process, right? Like they wanted to make sure that the foundation had like the right talent because you're building something from scratch. Like we are, yes, a corporate foundation, but we're a startup. Like we have to figure out and develop what is the philosophy? What is the NBA gonna stand for? But I got that job, and it's funny, I cried when I got the job, and I'm not like a huge crier, but like it was one of those moments of like, this was the perfect intersection of my professional expertise. I had spent 10 plus years working in a variety of different sectors, but while it sounds crazy to the average person, special ed teacher, US Senate, like nonprofit, JP Morgan Chase, Nike, the thread of all of those jobs is working and supporting young people. So if the NBA's foundation is about supporting particularly Black young people, 14 to 24, there's no one better than Lauren Sills. So I was able to get the job, get the role, and I've been there ever since.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop here because I'm gonna draw a correlation, and then I'm gonna ask you a question.
I know, I feel like like this is my biopic.
I mean, but this is, I think, y'all love the context? Okay. So I struggled to even get into Prairie because of standardized testing. I was trying to play basketball. My dad was All-American here in Houston.
Oh, wow.
That stopped for me. Came to Prairie View, best decision of my life. I got into SJ my sophomore year because I realized school is not free up here, and my parents were paying for it out of pocket. And I became the senator over athletics. Right, that was my first corridor into like seeing something and involving myself into something. And I was a comm major. Then the next year I became the senator over communications. And the next year I actually ran for president, and I won. Did really well here. The Panther statue, rec center, stadium, the park. That was all under my referendum when I was here. But I was a kid that couldn't get into school to run in one. And after graduating in 2012, we started our nonprofit, which is centered around education. I went to go sub, to be a teacher, to really like figure out how these kids were maneuvering. And then as we were doing that, all these other things created from that was Reading with a Rapper, and we 500,000 kids, all stuff like that. But I graduated in 2012. All-Star comes to Houston in 2013. I actually get to intern with NBA Entertainment.
Woo.
So I'm driving back and forth from 290 every day. In class, 18 hours doing that, making it work. Then that leads to me working with the Rockets a little bit while they're in the playoffs. That stops, and then, of course, we're running our nonprofit. We get a big break where that same corridor when Nike comes to make that promise, and I've never said this, and I'm probably going to say this for the first time publicly. Nike chose us when they made that promise, right? So when you think about, we don't see where the dollars are going with, they really did do what they were supposed to do, and we invested a lot of money into HISD, into schools publicly. I think maybe 250,000 we did just from there, but you were a part of the team that invested into us as a nonprofit to go do that work, right? And so now coming back around, you're at the NBA and we're at that same corridor where I'm talking to the Rockets, but it's still threaded in youth, civic engagement, giving, and it has nothing to really do about us. And I think if y'all realize that whatever you're driving yourself into, whatever you're doing, often you get what you want when you don't make it about you. And that's the trick of it. It's hard to kind of face that because you look at things, you have to start facing yourself and challenge yourself to be the best version of yourself to reach those goals. But as you can hear through her story, I think there was a resounding energy of where your why was just, this is happening. I'm making it happen, whether nobody likes it or not. I want to do it, right? And I think over time you made other people believe you around, and it propelled you. So coming from all of that, coming from an HBCU, how did your culture help you socially maneuver through all these things? Because now you're at the corridor of two companies that are really culturally embraced companies too, right? How did going to an HBCU help you navigate those spaces? Did you use some of those superpowers from that undergrad into these new sectors?
Yeah, I mean, I loved my time at Spelman. It truly changed my world, changed my life, and just shaped me as a leader. And at Spelman, you get a chance to just meet and connect with what we call Spelman sisters, right? I mean, these are your sister friends. These are people who care deeply about you and your success. And so at Spelman, because I had this rich network, I leaned into the network. I mean, you're all classmates, right? Most of you, I feel like everybody's classmates. Maybe, maybe not, right? Maybe people are above or below. But I say that to say your classmates become your coworkers. So that level of relationship definitely matters, and you want to maintain it because those people could be vouching, endorsing you for different roles. And so at Spelman, I felt like I developed, but also just maintained and grew what it meant to have a network and to leverage that network or to, scale that network for any of these jobs. So if I saw a Spelman sister that worked at Nike, she was the first person I was going to reach out to, right? Or a Morehouse brother, or anyone who went to an HBCU, because we had that connection. And so those relationships, HBCUs are so different than any other school. And we lean in more to our community. So who else but us to just say, hey, can you give me the real deal about this? What is this team or department like? So the superpower was really the network. I don't know about y'all, but when you go to like the airport and you see somebody else in the Clark Atlanta like sweatshirt or the Simmons like hoodie, are you dapping them up? Are you saying hello? Like you're giving them a hug? That's only us. You know how many people are wearing like Michigan sweatshirts and don't talk to anybody?
Facts.
Like our schools, we care so much about each other and our success, and that really has helped to I would say can really push my career trajectory forward.
And now you're at a point where you're working one of the biggest global companies in the world, and you have a chance to impact the future. And so now you're at the intersection of creating this HBCU internship program. And I think that's how we really connected, because she was like, hey, I have this program. And immediately I'm like, you got somebody from Prairie View? Somebody from Prairie View on there? Because I'm always looking to see how we can bring people beyond the hill into other sectors. And she was like, actually, I am looking for somebody from Prairie View. And talking to Ms. Hill and Dr. Moore, and we were just like, hey, I think we might have a chance to do something really special. And so I would love for you to kind of speak more about that particular project and what that is, and what's the qualifications or the application process for any intern looking to be a part of the NBA.
Okay, so one, raise your hand if you've heard about the NBA HBCU Fellowship Program. One that just warms my heart. I'll have to share with you all the origin story. So it's fall 2021. This is a year after George Floyd and everything. And so the New York Times had put out an article about what corporations had done since, kind of the year mark, right, or a little after. And our commissioner, Adam Silver, had read that article, and the NBA wasn't mentioned. But we know we were doing so much. And so he was like, I want to do more. I want to make sure we're doing more, specifically for HBCUs. And so I created a program that's called the NBA HBCU Fellowship Program. It's a 10-week internship program for undergrads and graduates of HBCUs to work at our team and league office. So if you are interested in working in the business of basketball, and for me, when I was at Spelman and you would have told me that I worked at the NBA, like in the future, I wouldn't have believed you, because I thought that the NBA was just focused on people who played basketball, right? But the NBA is so multidimensional and multifaceted. We have every job you can imagine. So yes, there are people who played basketball who also work there, but more than not, we have actually people who, like me, were poli-sci majors and work there and are leading there. We have people who are doing communications, to ticket sales, to corporate social responsibility. We have a whole team that are data scientists, because that NBA app takes a lot of technology to make it happen. And so we launched that program 3 years ago. It's been highly successful. I'm incredibly proud of it, because students, we know the talent is everywhere, but the opportunity isn't. And so the first time in the NBA's 75 at that time history, they hadn't gone to HBCUs. We weren't targeting our schools, but we know the talent's there. And so we launched that program. In the very first year, we had maybe 3,000 applicants for 59 spots. And again, people are working 10 weeks at the Portland Trailblazers or the Houston Rockets, or working in New York. This past year, y'all, we had 11,000 applicants for 70 spots. Wow. That's how competitive, that's just how interested people are about working in sports. You want to have that opportunity. And so we are launching again in December. If you are interested, please apply. Would love to have you. And right now we have about 200 alum. We have those 200 alum represent 39 different HBCUs. I met some of you earlier today, and I was like, oh man, I need a student from Simmons. I need a student from Prairie View, because we just haven't had it. So I want to make sure that not only are you familiar with the program, but if you are interested in working in basketball in any capacity, again, you could work in security, you could work in data analytics, you can work in finance, you can work in, name it. We have production and entertainment. We have a music department at the NBA. You literally could do anything. So let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But again, just proud about that program and the impact that it's had so far.
Yeah, I think you're also alluding to that we all have our cultural connections, that whether it be sports, music, fashion, that's just natively our language as Black people. And they're not monolithic to those career pathways. And I think sometimes, like, I never knew, like, you can be an engineer and go work at Nike.
Yeah.
Right? No one's thinking about that, or they're not really culturally coming down to HBCU. So I will always, urge you guys, things that y'all love to go do, I'm pretty sure there's a job for it right around the corner, right? It is not always the thing the front-facing thing that you're seeing, because often the players is what you're seeing, but there's people that you don't see that make way more money than the players, right? So don't be so fixated on being in front of the camera all the time. There's so many different things around that lend to what you see on TV that, drive it at the end of the day. Without that, you couldn't really get that actual finishing product. Okay. Yes, I think let's do some questions from the audience. What we got? Okay. We going, Lauren, you can point them out.
Testing. Okay.
And say your name and school, please.
Hello, my name is Ariane Crystal Calise Spears. I am a class of 2028 psychology major at Clark Atlanta University, the illustrious. So my question is, when you were in your HBCU, what were things that you were involved in that, pushed you to be where you are now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I was highly active at Spelman. I was a campus ambassador. I was in a group that was called Pulse, which essentially did all the, that did all of the programming for school. That particular club or organization also changed my life, because that was like event planning every single moment. So the concerts, the homecomings, we planned it, we did it. I ended up leading that team my senior year with one of my best friends. I also played volleyball at Spelman. We weren't that great, but I learned a lot. But I played volleyball at Spelman for a few years. I also pledged at Spelman. I'm a Delta, so shout out to Eta Kappa. So definitely in general, I feel like I was very, very busy, but I was able to kind of balance all of the things that come with school. If you're busy in college, you're gonna be busy in life. And I can already tell y'all are busy because you're here, you flew here, or you drove here, you're at a conference right now trying to be your best selves. And I feel like at school, that's like the grounding for it. So not only be active in those organizations, but also try to lead them if you can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think somebody,
These two. You had a hand, right?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Isaiah Clay. I am a senior at Southern University majoring in public relations, who's interested in a variety of things. You mentioned production, marketing, advertising, things like that. I first want to say I admire your hustle. That goes for you too. Y'all are both killing it. So this question is for both of you. I know you talked a lot about mindset and consistency and determination. What kind of helps you to kind of lock in on your goals and stay focused, because there's a lot of distraction in this day and age. So what kind of helps you lock in? That's my first question.
That's great.
I guess for me, when it comes to working on, because I think it's two things: you can work in the business or work on the business. And I'm getting to the point where I'm working on it. I really isolate where I don't watch TV. I have certain distractions off from me. My wife would tell you I might just have some music on, and I'm just literally reading to help me understand some things, or just doing my everyday things that help me. So I have those cutoff days like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. There's no TV on my house. I'm literally dialing in for maybe 4 hours to do something, and then I might go outside and just go walk. You know what I mean? Just to clear my head and just to kind of have my mental capacity at a space for me to be. So that's one way I do it from on the business. And I think from a technical side is, am I impacting all the kids that I want to impact? And the answer is no, so my job's not done. Right? For me, I'm looking at how I globally touch everyone in some way. If I haven't done it, my job's not done.
Job's not finished. So similar to Jarren, I really do have an intense morning routine. I do believe that is one of the ways to get success. Now, I'm a morning person. If you're someone who does better at night, you could have a nighttime routine, right? I just wake up between 4:30 and 5 every single day.
Everybody
Everyone's like,
oh
Jesus.
my God, oh my gosh.
No, I do.
4:30.
And ask my friends. I'm texting them at that time too. But I wake up between 4:30 and 5. At that time, I listen to a sermon every single day. And the sermons are like 25, 26 minutes, not long. Then I spend 30 minutes reading. Now, that could be anything from a book that I've been really interested in, or even reading, like, I'm calling it the paper, but it's really like your phone, right? It's like New York Times, like it's Fortune, etc. So I spend 30 minutes doing that. And then I like to run. So depending on, the day, I'm either running outside. So like yesterday, I ran 3 miles in the morning, right? Or if I was at the hotel, maybe I would run, right? So I spend like an hour or 45 minutes exercising, and then shower, get ready for the day, and go forth. Like I'm in the office, and the NBA requires you to be there 4 days a week. I'm in the office like at 8:30, because I want to get there before everybody else gets there. I want to download. I want to have my time. I want to center myself. But because I have that kind of intense morning routine, I've poured into myself that morning. Like I'm ready to, this job is incredibly selfless. Like both of our jobs are, right? I'm constantly talking. I average between 8 to 10 meetings a day. So like the time that I spend in the morning that's just for Lauren Sills is like my precious time. And now, yes, I am tired by like 8:30 p.m., but that's what I do. And again, I think you got to find what your rhythm is. You don't have to follow Jarren and I, but you should definitely stick to a routine that works best for you, where you're hopefully like the most productive, but also developing yourself, whether that's, and I say developing meaning like spiritually, right? Like emotionally, financially, like you should be, or emotionally, you should be spending time with yourself before you give it to your job or to people that you work with.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And one last question. In what ways have you both been winning recently, even if it's like a small win, or in what ways have you been winning?
I actually want to ask you this question because I didn't get a chance. When did you get your first no? And how did you feel when you got and what did you do after you heard the no?
That's a good
And I think it's going to answer your question.
Okay, so my first real no was that like point between working at essentially the U.S. Senate and trying to figure out what the next role was. I was highly interested in working in Obama's White House. And so at that time, as you can imagine, again, a super competitive role. Like I had a million informational interviews with anyone who worked in Obama's White House. Like I was meeting with them because I desired to be on that team. Again, just incredibly inspired. When I tell you I got rejected from almost like every department there because it's just too competitive. I mean, again, thousands of people applying. And so there was one job in particular that I just was getting to the final round. I was meeting the top people. I thought I was gonna get it. And they were like, no, we've gone with someone else. That no like hurt because I was like, I just felt destined to be in that area or in that team. But I was motivated after that no to be like, okay, I'm still gonna make a difference to people I care about. I'm still gonna take and channel that like, hurt, doubt, some of that insecurity that comes with no's, and it's gonna channel me to be better, right? So I'm gonna invest in myself even more. I'm gonna read more. I'm gonna do more. Like I'm gonna connect with more people. It just really did like propel me. I don't take no's as like, oh man, I'm like, sad about it for multiple days. I might be sad for a day, but like what God has called me to do is so much bigger than that no. So you just gotta keep going.
And I would say from my perspective, a thing that I'm winning in is as a black man, I'm 34 years old, been working for myself for like 10 plus years, and it hasn't been easy. And I was just on our honeymoon because we recently just got married, and hey.
Come on, Black love.
But in that moment while we were on our honeymoon, I was like, man, how many people, black people, have the time to reflect? Just to sit down and just think about like, this is what I just did my first half of my life. What do I want to do for the next half, right? And I think that was the ability of real success for me to be like, I can actually think about what I really want to do and chart my own pathway. Not the material stuff that comes with it, but the ability to just to have my mind open to do it. Because often we're sacrificing and struggling every day to try to figure something out. We don't have that luxury to think. right? So us being here, you guys being here at the level that y'all are, y'all have a luxury level to think at a different level than most of your counterparts might not have to. So I think for me, that's where I'm at right now, being really in the more humble greatness part of being able to just think and reflect and create more things in that way, if that makes sense. It's more of a mindset thing more than anything.
Dr. Moore, can we have one more question?
Yes, please.
You can't
Lean
say
on that.
no.
Lean on that. Oh, spell me.
Yeah,
Oh.
well, I was going to say Prairie View.
Yes, Prairie View,
Yeah.
then spell me.
Yeah.
So 2 more.
Okay, make it quick. Make it quick.
We gotta at least do.
I won't be as long-winded.
Hello, I'm Tia. I'm a see here. So my question is, so you were saying that you were scheduling those informational meetings with people. How are you getting those schedules with them in that 20-minute? Are you
good question.
taking them out for lunch? Are you paying for the lunch? Are you Zoom meetings?
Good question. Tell me your name again.
Tia.
Tia, thank you for that. So
Baby.
those 20-minute meetings were actually like on the phone. This is showing my age. There was no Zoom back then. So you just had to call people at the time that you said in the email that you would call them. But I would have different questions for each person. I do this a lot just in terms of like having informational interviews with young people. You should be researching and preparing for those conversations. And every conversation should be different because you're trying to get either a different perspective or a different insight. You can't just keep asking people the same question. How did you get your start? What's it like here? You could find that answer out, right? So make sure that those 20-minute conversations or 15 or 30-minute conversations, you're not only dedicated to learning more about the person, but you have an ask for that person. Right? You're specific, you're detailed, you showcase that you've taken the time to get to know them, at least kind of virtually, and then you're pouring into them. And then they're gonna be able to pour back into you. That's how you start and maintain relationships. But please believe I had an Excel document. I wrote down every single company that I thought I would be able to like work for, or I thought was aligned to my core values. Then another column in that Excel were the people that I knew or were connected to those companies. And then I would actually send LinkedIn messages to all those people. I also could figure out the emails of those people because a lot of the emails are the same. And then I would send, those emails, and whoever responded were the people that I was talking to and investing my time in. So that's the kind of my strategy. It hasn't failed, but definitely, figure out what works best for you.
I would say relationships over transactions. I don't go into a situation like, I know I want to work for this person or partner with them. People's coming up to doing that all the time. I'm not even asking about that, right? I'm trying to find another correlation to where like, oh, you like to fish? Oh, I love to fish. And like, we're finding unique ways to just grow because we're still people and human beings, and people need people. So relationships over transactions, because when they can, smell out a transaction, they're like, oh, it's a quick no. Because they just, are ready to move on to some other stuff like that.
Thank you, Tia.
Last spellman question.
Yay.
Oh, okay, projected.
So I stayed at Howard Herald, so HH. Oh, no one's from HH. Okay, it's okay. It was a great dorm. And your second question was, say it one more time for me. Ooh. I would say 2 things. One, and I say this frequently to like my circle of friends, like you just don't know what God has in store. If you would have told me, and one of my best friends, Courtney's in the audience, she was with me when I was a teacher. If you would have told me when I was crying to her all the time, every weekend about how hard and challenging that job was, that 15, almost 20 years later, I would be an MBA executive, like we wouldn't have believed it. But what God has was so much greater than what my imagination was at that time. So that's one. And the second one, I actually tell every college student, like be nice, be kind to every single person that you meet. You do not know how that person is going to impact or affect or be brought in your life again. You thought, oh, I just had a class with them, da-da-da. No, they could be your boss. They could be your teammate. They could be someone that gets you to that next role or job. And what I've seen, and I've graduated from Spelman a long time ago, what I've seen is the people who are nice just go far. They go farther, right? The people who aren't as nice, maybe petty, maybe cliquey, etc., they don't go as far. Because when you send an email to someone that you were nice to, of course they're gonna be like, oh man, Lauren Sills, da-da-da. Like, I'm gonna push her forward. I'm gonna make sure like the resume is seen. If you're not nice, it's not happening. It's not gonna happen. So be nice, be kind to every single person that you meet. Again, you don't know, similar to the first one, you don't know what God has in store to maybe bring those people back into your life.
Faith without works is dead, right? You can ask and pray for things to happen, and God receives that, but then it's your job, right, to go do that. And when you pray for something, be careful what you pray for and how you pray for it. I pray for patience, and sometimes God delivers what you want, but not the version of what you want it to be, because it's what you need versus what you want. So when you can identify that and you can lean into that more of saying, it's not my will. All right, let me just do what I need to do and focus on the intent of why I'm doing it, and am I going forward? And if it's checking off those boxes, if I'm going forward, I'm alive, I'm paying my bills, just keep going forward. And over time, it just compounds to where you look up, you just be like, man, because you're not worried about the optics, you're worried about the impact. And I think sometimes where we are in today's age is optics are really over impact, and really the impact is really where it lies at in reality. And then fail fast enough so you can get up to go forward, longer. If you learn to take an L, L's really are just creative no's that turn into W's. So it's not that you're not good at what you do, you're just not good at that moment right there. Sometimes God is giving you a no to protect you, right? And so sometimes we look at it as like, I failed. It's not so much if I failed, is that am I prepared at this time right now to do that? If he gave me what I wanted right now, could I really handle that? And if not, then right, if you get it too early, then everything stops before you even, get going. Does that help? Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, let's get our speakers a hand.
Yay.
So I have a small presentation on behalf of the National Association of African American Honors Programs. The plaque reads, presented to Lauren Sills, keynote speaker, 2024 National Association of African American Honors Programs Annual Conference, has the theme Elevating the State of Honors Education, Academic Excellence, Culture, and Innovation. Prairie A&M University, October 31st through November 2nd, 2024. And also on behalf of the Prairie A&M University bookstore, they have a little goodie bag for you. Also for you, Mr. Small, you get one as well.